Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we've got something pretty spectacular. Some of you will know what that is just from this package, but for those of you who don't, this is a Grimsmo Knives Rask. This is the second offering from Grimsmo Knives, the first one being the Grimsmo Norseman, which most of us are familiar with. And the interesting thing about Grimsmo Knives is this ongoing sort of effort to perfect what they're doing. And they initially came out with something really cool with the Norseman, but they were like making them from in their garage, and now they have graduated to a multi-million-dollar manufacturing facility with and if you watch their videos, it's really impressive and super interesting to see just the incremental steps toward ever increasing perfection that they take. And just watching that sort of unfold and the level of interest they have in trying to really perfect their craft is amazing and entertaining all on its own. I suppose if they didn't make knives, I wouldn't be that interested or as interested, but it's at least equally as interesting, seeing the cool knives they make, but is seeing the process and the various innovations that they go through in making them. So I have to say all of that sort of upfront. Now there is sort of this underlying theme to this video, okay? And that is, how much are you willing to pay for that level of perfection? All right, because if you want, and by the way, this is one of the most perfect folding knives I have ever held. And I can say that very easily. It is absolutely spectacular in so many different ways. They really have taken, the idea of making a folding cutting tool and pushed it to the nth degree. They have this ongoing pursuit of just making the most perfect tool that they can. And it's really interesting. But it really is costly as well. And so that I think will kind of be a theme that runs throughout this video as we discuss various different things, because a big surprise here, there's not a lot wrong with this knife, okay? Really, everything that you look at here, from the blade to the action to the handle to, just everything is exceptional. It really is. Let's quickly give you guys size and weight on this, because even that is pretty stinking impressive. Okay, I like larger knives, and although I wouldn't call this a large folder, it is 8 1/8 inches, so it's absolutely a full-sized knife. Blade length on this guy is basically 3.5 inches and 4 5/8 on the handle length. It's slim, okay, so about 3/8 of an inch thick, which means it carries really lightly in pocket. It takes up no space, and this weighs in at only 3.19 ounces, which again is exceptional. All right, there are very few knives that give you this amount of size, this amount of comfort. Like, this is not a super small, slim handle that feels like you don't have anything. There's definitely enough grip here. And so to have a knife of this size and this level of utility that only weighs 3.19 ounces, just call it 3.2, I guess, is really impressive. Now, having gotten past that point and sort of having picked up the theme, these are not easy to get a hold of. The way that you have to buy these is to sign up on an email with your email to a list, and then you will get a notification when it's your opportunity to buy a knife. You can sign up either for the Rask or the Norseman. And essentially what happens is when your name comes up, they send you an email, say, this is the knife we have available. You can either take that knife at the price that it is, okay, and there's a little bit of variability there. But these are like around $950. Both knives are around that price. So you can either take that knife at the price that they've given you, or you can say, sorry, I don't like that one, and you can kind of go back on the list, okay, and wait for the next one to come up. I think in the meantime, alternately to that, they have random draws where from time to time they'll run all the email addresses they have through a draw, and you may get an opportunity that way to kind of jump ahead in line a little bit. I could be a little off on that. I think that's how it works. So there's kind of two simultaneously running systems. I did go over to their website and try to read through exactly what's going on. Anyway, you can go to their website as well. I'll put a link in the description box below in case you really wanted to get involved with this. Now, let me just tell you, I want to point out that the anodization on this handle is not from factory. The owner, Skyler, thanks a lot, Skyler, by the way, for letting me handle this knife. I don't know if he's on Instagram or not. I'll check it out in the meantime. And if he is, I'll put a link to his Instagram down below so you guys can go follow him and see a little more of this knife if you really, really enjoy it. But he has done the anodization work and he did a really good job. Originally from factory, this knife came just in like standard gray. So moving past that, let's go ahead and talk about this blade just a little bit. Again, super impressive. So this is a stone wash with a polish, and you can see the reflection of my face there and the phone and all that kind of stuff. This blade is exceptional. The finish is gorgeous. The edge is nice and thin. The stock is pretty thin as well. It's 20 thousandths behind the edge and it's 124 thousandths stock. So not a heavy duty blade, okay, but certainly it's going to slice really well. And, you know, as for EDC tasks, I think it's going to work quite nicely. Although I didn't go and, you know, skin an elk with this thing to see how it works. I actually took it pretty easy when I was using and carrying and testing this a little for this video. And that's because it costs a lot of money and I want to make sure I return it back to Skyler in the same condition that I received it in. All right, so I was a little careful, but I did do some cutting and it cuts really, really well. This is a nice user-friendly blade. I wouldn't call this a heavy duty EDC, and I certainly wouldn't call it a tactical knife. So if you lean toward, you know, if your favorite knife is a Recon 1, this is probably less appealing to you. But if you like that refinement and that high-end feel, you're really gonna like this, okay? So now that we've got the blade out of the way, RWL 34, we've got this high flat grind and a draw point. I guess I should have mentioned all of that as well. Really, really nice performance on this. It's comfortable. It's got a nice spine so you can get your thumb up there. Now, we're not quite talking to ergonomics yet, but I will just point out the way that they've done this is actually pretty nice. They've just left this nice rounded spot. So you can put a finger on here and choke up on this knife for detailed work. Again, pretty impressive. So yeah, is the blade good? It is absolutely fantastic in terms of function, in terms of looks. Yeah, really, really nicely done. Moving on to the action, which everyone talks about. And yeah, this is very impressive. You can see it just drop shut. Now, some will argue that this is a little too drop shutty, that it'll bounce off the detent a little bit. And if you aren't careful, it may, I don't know. It hasn't been a real problem for me, but I know others have said, you know, maybe it's a little too smooth. I don't find it to be that way. And certainly I have to give credit to the Skaha. This really does, the action on this brings to mind the feeling of the North Arm Knives Skaha and of the Holt Spectre, okay? And those are two of the nicest feeling knives that I have ever felt, and this is absolutely right there with them. All of those knives are fantastic. Now, there are some knives that come in at a cheaper price point that have a similar feel, and we'll talk about that when we get to some comparisons. So, lockup and deployment, really, really nice. The lock bar is easy to access. The only complaint I have is I think they've smoothed this flipper tab just a little bit too much. I would like, you know, there is some jimping there, you can see, and if they left that just a really, really little bit sharper, I feel like it would be a little easier to flip this. As it stands, the odd time I feel like I've got to put some extra energy into paying attention to what I'm doing to make sure that my finger doesn't slide off the flipper tab. And that is really the only fairly minor criticism that I have. Otherwise, everything is perfectly done on this knife. The action is just superb. It really, truly is. And again, you know, it makes sense considering the way the Grimsmos are doing things. Yeah, so no complaints really about the action. The lock bar is easy to access. The tension is set perfectly. The detent is perfect. Again, that only minor complaint is that lock bar is a little bit, I mean, the flipper tab is just a little bit slick. What about the handle? The handle, again, is basically perfect. It's comfortable. It's got this nice milling that makes it fairly grippy in hand. It's hand filling. Now, this is something, smaller knives, especially really lightweight knives, often feel very insubstantial. And that is not the case with this knife. It feels really nice in hand. You get this little spot here where you can choke up to do detailed work, and I have used it this way, and it's really, really nice. And so, again, really, really impressive. Standoff construction. If you take a look inside, you can see it's heavily, heavily milled out. And they've even matched the texture on the inside with the texture on the outside, which, again, the attention to detail is mind-boggling. It really, really is. And so in terms of construction, in terms of ergonomics, you know, I really, once again, have no complaints. It feels really, really good. It's got just enough traction. It's large enough in size to be comfortable in hand. I mean, I don't know what you would complain about here. By the way, while we're talking about ergonomics, the grip area is 3 7/8 inches, which is, again, really impressive for a knife of this size. And I feel like, you know, there's a lot of things that fall into this category, okay? It's got lots of grip, it's comfortable, it's lightweight. I mean, it's just, what we have here is a nearly perfect folding knife, okay? And so if that's the thing that really excites you, you know, if what really, you know, makes your motor run is something that's so stupidly perfect that it's hard to even imagine, then this is a knife that's going to be really, really appealing with this qualification. That level of protection, that level of perfection does not come cheap, okay? And so that's the only issue here. This is basically a production knife that costs $900 US, okay? Now, I know that there are customs that cost a lot more. There are customs that cost a little less. There's certainly lots of production knives that cost less. Really, this is in the ballpark of, you know, Shirogorov. It's double a Chris Reeve, okay? So price is definitely something that needs to be discussed here. And I do feel like, you know, yeah, if you want that level of protection, why do I keep saying that? I don't know, but you want that level of perfection, you're going to have to pay for it. Okay. So that is where that $950 price tag is justifiable to some people. That said, there are a lot of knives out there that are very close, if not as good, okay? And this is going to sound crazy, but a knife that this really reminds me of is the Real Steel Megalodon. I don't have one in my collection anymore. I really should add one just for this reason, but that's like a $200 knife, and it is, if you want to get as close to you can as feeling this kind of action, the Real Steel Megalodon is definitely your best bet. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal knife. It really is. Which costs a small fraction of this. And there are others that I could give. And so I want to pull in a couple of examples at this point because it's going to kind of drive my point home. Again, this is a knife that I absolutely adore. I feel like this is one of the most perfect knives out there. Again, here's another knife that many people feel like is, you know, the most perfect folding knife. Does this do some things better than these two? Yeah, I have to give it some credit. Although my personal preference would probably be toward one of these rather than this guy. And that's because I like the larger, beefier folders, okay? Outside of that, though, you have to give a ton of credit because it is truly exceptional. So that's the Riot Torrent, and that's the Chris Reeve in Cosi. I've got a couple of other knives that I want to bring in here. Here is a knife that I wanted to bring in for a very particular reason. So this is a little larger. It's a little more appealing to me in terms of design. And here's the point I wanted to make. This is quite a bit less money. And in my mind, everything functions just as well. I would consider this basically just as perfectly executed as the Rask, except I like the design a lot more. The design is really interesting and appealing, and it's different. This doesn't feel very different. Okay, obviously the Norseman does feel very different, and maybe they've gone too far with that, and so this is a bit of a, you know, pendulum swinging the other direction. But I would have liked to see something more like this from their second offering. Finally, I've got to bring in a couple of folders that are on the budget end of the spectrum that, again, forced me to bring up the value here. These are the knives that Massdrop is doing right now with Ferrum Forge, and they're built by We Knives. These are really, really impressive. And again, like $130. And man, I've got, the action, the ergonomics, the blade shape. This is a knife that's really, really done well. And I would put this in that nearly perfect category, just like this one, except it's a huge amount less, right? Like it's $800 less. So that's sort of the elephant in the room for me when I'm trying to discuss this Rask. Is it amazing? It is absolutely amazing. There is no question that the excellence that the Grimsmos have achieved here is off the charts, and it really, really blows me away to just get to handle this knife, and I'm super thankful that I'm able to. Skyler, again, a huge, huge thank you for letting me get a hold of this and get to know it a little bit. It's been an absolute joy handling this knife. The question that always comes up in my mind when I'm handling this, when I'm looking at it, even as I was writing this review, I really struggled with the value. How do I, and I still don't know if I've gotten it right, guys. I really don't. Have I been too critical? Have I been not critical enough? I'm probably, there's going to be a spectrum on that. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Are you like $950? I don't care if it's made of solid gold. That's baloney. Or are you like, hey, $950? There's customs out there that cost $3,000 that aren't as well done as this. And both of those points, I think, have some legitimacy. So wherever you land on it, I wish you all the best. If you want one of these, I would not try to talk you out of it at all, okay? If you don't want one, though, and you feel like you can get equal performance, very close to equal level of perfection for less money, I wouldn't argue with that either. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.